Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also attached a copy to the DC database where you can look at plot and character, who's in this story, character origin. It's a really neat site. So I recommend you go to it. We're going to be looking at two issues today. We're going to be looking at Batman 414 from 1987, and you would think we would be looking at 415, but we won't because there's actually a gap between this part of the story and the conclusion to the story. So we're then going to be looking at Batman 421. This is in the beginning of Jim Starlin's run as writer of Batman. I have already covered the 10 Nights of the Beast, which actually take place after this. In between, it's sandwiched in between these two stories. And I decided, well, let's do this story and then do the one after. It just kind of made more sense to do them together. So Jim Aparo is the penciler. Rest in peace, Jim Aparo. Jim Aparo was a DC artist, kind of like their John Romita, I would say. He did this cover, and one of the things that I enjoy, so he's a bit of an older style, like I said, like a John Romita. But he works, if you take a look at these beautiful thick lines. He does not ink the inside, but you can definitely, I love, I just love the thick lines. I'm a big fan of artists like Chris Samnee and Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, and others that just give us that beautiful thick line. So, all right, here we go. So Batman is narrating this story, and so it just kind of goes here that she was just another nameless victim. My goodness, I cannot speak today. Murdered for reasons yet to be fathomed, and then good a vertical panel. This kind of crime happens a lot more often than anyone would like to admit. He's been involved in hundreds of cases like it. Maybe not as brutal, but just as anonymous. And then he goes here that it was about 2 months ago in a back alley of a crummy section called South Heights. He heard the call on the radio and decided to stop in for the look, wondering if this killing was connected to the two earlier slasher. Now this cracks me up. Commissioner Gordon, the police commissioner, is involved as if he were just a regular detective. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the Batman the Animated Series is that they created two cops that would kind of stand in for Gordon, because having the commissioner investigate just just a murder. I mean, commissioners have a lot more to do than to also play detective. So having Jim Gordon here is a bit funny. As you know, when I was a kid, what the heck did I know? But as I got older, I'm like, what the heck is a commissioner here? I understand that him and Batman have a relationship, but it was nice to see when they created characters like Harvey Bullock and Renee Montoya and others that have come through the years that Batman would interact with. So just kind of wanted to put that part in there. So Gordon says it's the same MO. MO means modus operandi. I think it's Greek. It's sort of what people do often. So it's the same, So that's what MO means. It's modus operandi. So basically, it's the same stuff. So Batman asks if he knows who she is, and the commissioner says none, just another Jane Doe in her early 20s, butchered and disposed of like a sack of garbage. And you got this cop here, kind of just can't believe what he's seeing. I'm quite sure that if you're a policeman in Gotham City, you'd be like, whatevs, because you're used to it. So here we have the title. Down here would have been the credits. One of the things that I found peculiar about Jim Starlin writing Batman is Jim Starlin is more of your cosmic guy. Jim Starlin, of course, is best known for the Infinity Gauntlet, creator of Thanos, the Silver Surfer. He did Cosmic Odyssey for DC Comics. He's done New Gods. He's done Thanos series, a lot of Thanos limited series. So to see him do sort of a straight up crime book featuring Batman does seem that it's a little bit out of his element, out of his wheelhouse, but he really did do a good job on Batman. He also did the limited series Batman the Cult, which I have covered, and one I have not covered, but he did both Batman the Cult with Bernie Wrightson, and also with Bernie Wrightson, he did a Punisher limited series called POV, Point of View, which I have not covered. But so Jim Starlin has done a few things. He also did a Daredevil graphic novel called Abattoir with the Black Widow on it. So he has done a little bit of it, but most of the time he's famous for the cosmic stuff, the sci-fi space stuff. So Commissioner Gordon says he still can't understand this type of crime. The guy cuts him to ribbons after he's done with them. It's senseless. And then he says he's getting too old for this work. Batman says he would like to see the forensic report when the CSI guys are done with it. Real quick, this blue, I absolutely love Batman in this blue. When I draw him, I use this blue. This is the Batman. That Batman of the 70s and 80s is the Batman that I grew up with. I know that afterwards they kind of did the darker colors. It makes more sense without Batman. I understand getting rid of the little yellow oval, but even then I really love the oval. I know Frank Miller said it was stupid. Why would someone that hides in the night wear something that can be aimed at? I get it. It still looks cool. I still love it. But Batman's no longer done like this, but every time I draw him, it comes in this beautiful blue. I just love him in that. So again, Batman asked to look at the forensics, and the commissioner says that he's not sure they'll find anything. The guy doesn't even leave any useful evidence. He's a non-secretor, can't even get a blood type on him. Batman says he'll slip up somewhere, and then they'll have him. And then he says, "Do you smell something burning?" And here comes fire. Batman says to get the fire department, and he's going to head over to the building to see if anyone needs help. And then he says here that if he'd come along a few seconds later, Kate would have died in that fire. She was in a tight fix. So we're going to meet someone here named Kate Babbitt. And again, he's still narrating this. Of course, at that moment, I had no idea the impact she'd have in my life. She was just another stranger in need of rescue. Again, another vertical panel. And again, he continues to narrate. All I knew is that I had mere seconds to save her and her child. So here he is throwing his bat rope. I nearly didn't make it. Fortunate Kate had more guts than most. So as she's falling here, he continues the narration. She must have felt certain that she was falling to her own death, yet kept a tight grip on the little girl just the same. So Batman's admiring her bravery. He snatches her. Good, solid panel. Jim Apato's a solid artist. Again, his style is just a little bit, even in the 80s with Todd McFarlane and Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee kind of starting to come, artists had been changing. And Aparo, again, I compare him and I keep saying he's DC's John Romita. Maybe not as impactful, but he was just this solid dude. So, rest in peace. You can find a little bit more about Jim Aparo on that DC database that I have linked down, and just kind of click on his name when you get there, and it'll give you stuff about him. So Batman then continues narrating. He says he was about to leave when he spotted Kate helping some of the survivors of the blaze. It wasn't until then that I noticed how stylish she was dressed and that it was curious. So Batman asks that if or asks her, "You didn't live across the street, did you?" And she says, "No, I was just passing by when I saw the fire. I thought maybe I could help somehow." And this lady here says, "You certainly did that, sweetie. You should have seen her, Mr. Batman, pounding on doors, telling people to get out. She ran back inside, rescued the other kids before she and the little Cindy got trapped on the roof." Batman says that was courageous of her. She says she didn't think much about it at the time and asks what was she doing in this area this time of night. She goes, "Working." Batman pauses, thinking she's a prostitute. And then he says, "Take that silly expression off your face. I wasn't working the street." So she's employed by the Human Resources program. She's a social worker, and a number of her clients live in South Heights. Those are those apartments. And Batman tells her, "You should know that this isn't a good area for young women to be wandering around alone at night." He just came from viewing a body of a woman about her age. She was killed less than a block from here. Another dumpster killing, this lady asks. Batman says he's afraid so. He's going to ask one of the police officers to escort her. And she says, "I don't mean to be rude, but she's 26 and she's been getting around Gotham for several years without an escort, and she can take care of herself." And Batman just kind of shrugs her off and says, "Suit yourself." And of course, we all know what's going to happen here. So he's been talking about her, so we just we know the setup that's coming. But regardless, here we go. Batman says he liked Kate's spunk. If only she'd been more common sense, had listened to reason. So many ifs. So as he leaves, he sees this guy here called Frank Cutter. He's this dope peddler, two-time loser. He thought about searching him, but didn't. He figured that the chances of him carrying were slim, and he had other business to attend to that night. And then he mentions that when he met Kate next, it was as Bruce Wayne. A week later, he had a business dinner that he couldn't get out of. And the host, Morton Babbitt, owned a company that he was hoping the Wayne Foundation could do business with. Kate introduces to Bruce to her, and she's, of course, the daughter of that Morton Babbitt. The dad did not approve of her work, thought she should get married, raise a family. She found that trying to help the poor was more satisfying concept, and he could understand and could get behind that. So Batman says that he found some of her attitudes about life a bit naive, but growing up rich does that to you. But all in all, he left that dinner feeling he made a new friend. Nothing romantic, just a friend. So I don't know why I find that funny, but over the next few weeks, we seem to run into each other quite often. She told me about how things were going in her job, and when he associates with the kind of characters that he does, it's a real treat to deal with someone who's doing good with their life, trying to help someone other than themselves. So we now cut. This lady here was coming home from work, and Batman even mentions she stopped at the grocery store for a TV dinner and some fruit. Um, and sees a young woman being pulled into a blue van. Um, she calls the police, and Batman hears the dispatch. So he goes over there, but was not able to run into that blue van. And he was about to call it a night when a call came in. There's been another dumpster killing, and Batman says he'll be right there. And now we're in victim number 4, and so we already know who it's gonna be. So, and Batman's gonna look, and he's just shocked and sees Kate, and he's taken aback a little bit. I love how Jim Aparo conveys that emotion right here of Batman just kind of distraught, just in a side panel. So, um, real good. I enjoy it. So, Jim Aparo, when you look at it through today's, with all the artists of today's, he does look very dated. Um, but man, this dude is solid. He's such a solid artist. So, all right. And so Batman is saying, it's easier when you don't know who the victims are. Um, Nothing clouds their his judgments, and emotions don't get in the way. So he just keeps looking at her, thinking about her. Can't believe she's dead, and how unfortunate this was. And the 4 women are dead, but he says there won't be a 5th. He's cut up his last victim, and then he pauses his cut up and cut her. Real quick here, and I didn't mention the guy's name, so let's go here. Frank Cutter Thompson. So I didn't mention. So Batman now thinks of him. So Thompson got his nickname from because of his expertise of diluting pure cocaine with other substances to stretch out his supply. They call the process stepping on or cutting the dope. He does think that he was there the night that that victim was killed. He thinks it's a long shot, but worth the investigation. And he goes through his associates. They were all willing to talk, but none of them had seen anything to say. Batman says Cutter has no history of excessive violent behavior, and he doesn't even use a knife. Everyone says he prefers a gun, but he decided not to give up on Cutter just yet. He had this feeling, even though he didn't fit this profile. Batman arrives at his apartment, and he doesn't need a pesky search warrant. So he actually searches the apartment, but nothing he wasn't able to find anything there. So Batman was about to give up on Cutter, but he had one last lead to check out. He basically says he tapped. So he hacks, in today's terms, into the Department of Motor Vehicles computer records. And the DMV had a blue van that was registered to Frank Thompson, who was Cutter. And he finally had what he wanted. He just couldn't locate Cutter, as if he dropped off the face of the earth. Days turned into weeks, and there was no trace of him. He began to think that maybe he had left town, and he didn't like that idea. Love the color of the sky, just kind of pure magenta here. So, he hoped that Cutter was still within his reach. Then one day he was visiting the commissioner, and he leaves through the front. We've seen Batman always leave through the back, and just how casual. See you tomorrow. Like, okay, here comes Batman. Comic books. I love them. So he overhears these 2 cops saying the buy's all set at the warehouse tonight. Cutter shows up with the nose candy, cocaine, of course, and they'll bust him. And Batman asks if they would like a little additional backup. So I love this guy's face. Still can't get over this. See you tomorrow, and just all right. So he spent the evening cruising that area where the dumpster victims had been. He still suspected Cutter and says that he has seen this red van um, three times through the night, and or three other nights, and just another fourth. And he was about to pull it over. I don't know how Batman can pull people over, but that's all right. And he was about to, like I said, it says here, was about to pull the truck over when he hears a gunshot. And these two guys are robbing the convenience store. I love how they're carrying the suitcase. Oh my goodness gracious. And oh, Jim Starlin. It's fun. It's a fun read to me at least. These two dudes don't see him, and he stops them, and the cops don't show up till midnight, so he's late. So he goes over and sees that the meat had gone sour. So the two cops say, "Hey, it's bad business ripping off your customers. You're gonna get yourself a bad rap." And he says, "How can it be bad business to keep the blow and his money?" He says, "That sounds like good business," and then he's gonna kill him. And the guy says, "You don't want to do that. Killing us will bring down more heat than he can handle." And this other dude says, "That's right. This area is heavily patrolled since those dumpster killings started. The cops might hear the shots." And so Cutter says, "Cops ain't going to hear nothing." He takes out a switchblade. So Batman sees this, thinks of her. So we just see this from surprise to, all right, I'm going to kick his ass. And you can see him getting angry. I enjoy this sequence. I think it's really cool. And then here comes Batman, um, just pissed and mad. So doesn't this look as if John Romita drew Batman? I mean, I know that I said he's like, but can't you see a little bit of it? Or maybe it's just me, but lands on this guy, gets this guy, throws him not down. This guy shoots him and misses. Batman's now on the top, grabs this guy. Cutter's running, says he wasn't expecting Batman. And Batman says, "Are you going to surrender peacefully, or are you going to put up a fight?" And Batman says, "Stay back." Or this guy says, Cutter says, "Stay back, I'll cut you." And Batman says, "I was hoping that would be your decision." And grabs the guy and probably breaks his arm or dislocates his elbow, one of the two. Says here he busted his arm. That's got to be a violation of my civil rights. I'm going to sue your butt off. And Batman just keeps looking, thinks of Kate, and out he goes, hits him, tells him to get up. The commissioner just arrives, says he's had enough. Again, the commissioner is just... I know that he's in there to stand for other stuff, but it's just the commissioner involved in all these things. So, Batman says I suppose he'll have to do for now. Tells him to get the forensic team to the van. Gordon asks why. He says that he thinks that this is where Kate Babbitt was murdered and thinks Cutter's the guy. So now he's at the Batcave waiting, and the call comes through, and Batman's like, "Did the forensic find anything?" Gordon says they're not gonna run results, and Batman's like, "Why?" And he says Cutter was in jail. He was busted for possession. He was out on bail yesterday, and he was already committing a crime. So, and the van was also in the impound until yesterday. And so Batman's like, "Oh no." So there's been another murder. So Batman's in there to go take a look. And says the Emmy, who says she's been dead about an hour. and Batman says Cutter's been with the police for 2 hours, and this cop says that witness says there was a red van, and Batman, of course, makes a connection, and again, um, Gordon says, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yes." Anything he can do, and Batman's like, "Nope, nothing," and he feels guilty for everything. A fifth woman is dead. It's his fault. Again, love the magenta sky, but it's not over. The butcher's still out there. He'll try to strike again, and hopefully his success makes him careless, and all he needs is one mistake, and he'll be his, and he'll find him. And then we get our credits here. And so now we go to 421 from 1988. So it's been about, so the other one was December of 87. So 7 months. Nope, December. So 6 months have passed. So from that issue to the conclusion of our story here. So we get this great cover, and one of the things which you may not have noticed is the shadow of the woman is in the, if you can just see in here, is Batman. So let me see if I can make it a little bit smaller. You can kind of see it looks pretty cool, I think. A little bit smaller. So anyway, so yeah, you can see Batman's kind of shadow there. It's kind of cool. So real quick, it's actually 3 issues, not 2. There is also gonna be Batman 422. So, and then you'll notice that the art has changed as Dick Giordano takes over as penciler with Joseph Rubinstein. Dick Giordano is mostly an inker. I don't really care for his pencil art. It does change a little bit of it, but you know, it's part of that story. I prefer Jim Aparo in here, so you'll have to kind of forgive Giordano's pencils. He's a great inker. Also, Giordano has also passed. So, all right. So here we go. 10 women have been murdered in that time. So we kind of get a little bit of a recap, a little bit of how they haven't been able to catch him. Here's you see all the women. So Batman thinks there should be 11, and the commissioner says there's only been 10. Batman says he has a pattern. He strikes once a week, skipping every 3rd week, and he should have struck again this past week. And how come they haven't come up with another body? Commissioner says he has his men checking the dumpsters twice a day, and the sanitation department has orders not to empty anything before checking if there's a body inside. And so far they haven't come up with anything. Maybe the slasher has moved on. These serial murderers have a habit of doing that, and Batman says he wants this one. And again, we kind of see Batman here speaking to us, saying, dear God, I want this one so bad I can taste it a little bit. But again, a little bit silly hearing Batman talk like this, but hey, it's the 80s. And again, Starlin is using this 80s movie reference language that was so prevalent. In the 80s, you had movies like Rambo, well, First Blood, and then Rambo. You had Die Hard. You had the oh my goodness, with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, Lethal Weapon. So you had a bunch, you know, that tough guy era there. So, and again, we kind of get on Kate Babick and why this is driving Batman. Then we get a really nice panel. Again, it's solid. Not as dynamic as it could be or anything like that, but it's a solid. Um, like I said, Giordano as a penciler, don't really care for. I do prefer Giordano the inker. And so we get a little narration of this guy and how he went from sniffing glue to becoming a cocaine addict. And he went from using drugs recreational to always needing it. And he's out looking for discarded food. He's going into a dumpster, and suddenly we got two thugs here. And they're like, it's a bum, a derelict. What's he doing in our turf? So he tells them he didn't mean any harm. Um, I'll listen to him one. If there's one thing I hate more than bums, it's whiners. And they hit him and hit him again. They kick him. And this guy's like, what a geek. How about we really hurt him? And of course, we see the shadow here of who's coming. And Batman says, let's not. And he says, are you okay, Elmore? He says, I think I lost another tooth. And Batman says he warned him to be out this late and to go home. He says, gotta get some food. Got 2 mouths to feed this days. And Batman says, 2? Yup, got me a wife. I'm a married man. Really? Batman says, congratulations. She's a real beauty. You ought to see her. Busy some other night. Catch you later, Elmore. She said, sure, Batman. And then, of course, she says, I met her near here. I met her at the dumpster next street over. And Batman, you can see his face kind of pauses. And he says, would you show me that dumpster? And so he's eating these donuts that were tossed. Batman, doesn't he carry like $20 or something to give this guy? I mean, goodness gracious. Um, he finds some dried blood, and Batman says, "You know what? I would like to meet her." So Elmore's gonna take him. Um, Batman goes along, and he goes, "Susie, I'm back. I brought company with me." And Batman just kind of looks. Um, Says Batman meets Susie. Um, isn't she a beauty? And all of a sudden, you're like, oh no, this guy grabbed a. He's got a rope here because, of course, she's a body, and so Batman kind of questions him, and he says, that it was a red van with a dragon fist, and he says, I know that vehicle. And he calls the police. Elmore's all unhappy because they're taking away the woman. This is a nice picture of Batman to make up for some of the the other ones that aren't good. Again, we got the commissioner here because he's got nothing better to do. Tells him he did the only thing he could. Keeping the body was insane. He says, maybe you're right, but he still feels bad. And Gordon asks him where he's going. He says he's walking away. Like, goodness gracious. I know that we're used to certain Batman doing certain things now, but that's what I like some of these old stories. These are the Batman stories that I read as a teenager and as a preteen. I was in 8th grade. I think I was in 8th grade. When this came out, probably ready to transition to high school. So, so here's the van, and Batman says, "I just want you to let me search it, and then answer a few questions." And this guy's like, that's bull. You're just looking for a way to bust us." And so Batman says he should have known better. And he fights them all, and this guy, you can see him here staying in the back, and he fights the other 3, and he's like, well, what's it gonna be? And the guy's like, yep, here you go, you can look at it. Batman finds dried blood, and he says, where were you guys Friday night? And he says, oh, that's easy, we were all in jail. They were fighting another gang, and they all got busted. And asks about his van. He says it was in the police impound. And Batman says, that's what I figured. And so Batman says some police technicians will be coming to look at the van. Don't hassle them. There's nothing to worry. He's not after them. They're trying to find out who took the van. And this guy's like, sure, before you go, it's not going to go look good if the guys wake up and I'm still pretty. Could you? And Batman then hits him, says, it's my pleasure. And thanks. And he just waves at him. So Batman again hacks into the computer and finds that the same police officer was on duty each night. It's this Victor Giambattista. That is quite the name. And he's at the impound, and this officer tells him that he's out of luck. The guy's off duty. He works the graveyard shift. Should he tell him that he's looking for him? Tells him not to bother. And here he is. So he goes running. He's goes to a payphone. This was the era of payphones. Says, it's me, Victor. I got trouble. And so he knows that he had agreed it was $100 per night, but now Batman's after them, and they tell him basically that to meet him, and he'll see him there. And Batman was about to go to the apartment, but this guy snatches this lady's purse, so he goes and helps, and then stays with her until the ambulance arrives. And when he arrives at the apartment, it's on fire. Batman assumes that he died from the smoke, but when he goes to pick him up, he sees blood. The guy was stabbed in the neck, and then sees the guy wrote something with his own blood. And so Batman goes out. He says they said he wasted his time. Batman says, I know he's dead. Take him to Commissioner Gordon. He'll take care of this. He's part of a major investigation. And so the word that the guy had written in his blood was cugino, which is Italian for a cousin. And so he finds Victor Gambista's is that his brother? Yeah, Vito. Victor's Gambista's cousin. Victor was the cop. And so he's looking around, looking for a knife. This guy's coming from behind him. Batman moves out of the way. He heard the floorboards. Quickly hits them. And he goes, you're a knife man. Guy says, what do you want? Batman throws a knife, lands next to him. And he says, tell me about him. The guy's like, screw off. Doesn't tell me again. And says, talk to me. I don't want to get rough. Behind him is another guy. Says, why don't you try me on for size? Batman says, I didn't hear him coming. He's a big one. Says he's called the cops. They'll be here any minute. This guy says, I didn't tell him nothing. And yeah, so you're planning on sticking around. It'd be real interesting to explain why you burglarized my pal's office. Batman says he has me. He backs off. And Batman figures you're the other guy in the van. He says, prove it. And Batman says, I will. And this guy goes, it's time to give up. And he goes, Batman's going to go after us whether we stop or not. We need to finish this. Get one more girl, make it an even dozen. This guy says it's too dangerous. He says, not the way I got it planned. So we end this issue with Elmore is settled in Arkham Asylum. 2 murderers walk free, and he wonders how he can fix this. And then we will go now to our concluding issue. So 422 is the last part, third and last part of the story, with yet another artist. So first of all, I do love this cover. It is really, really cool. Batman here holding this knife. It is cool. I have this entire run. So Jim Starlin's entire run on Batman, I have all the individual issues. But let me tell you, this cover is pretty badass. So now this is being narrated by uh this guy here, Carl. So he's narrating. Mark Bright, who is the penciler for this issue, did he was part of that resurgence um of Iron Man at Marvel. Uh Probably during this time. Um so uh Mark Bright, that is where I remember him most from. He's done a bunch of other stuff, but to me, I have a soft spot for that Iron Man run. So Carl here's narrating this. Ever since Batman left 3 hours ago, my pal Vito, I'm not even gonna try, has been acting like he's passing a kidney stone. The guy's coming apart at the seams. This is no good. Vito's telling him, "Hey, Batman knows we murdered those women. He knows we're the dumpster slashers. The guy never gives up. He won't quit until he busts us. What are we gonna do? The Batman's on to us." Carl's just um, sharp or cleaning his fingernails with that knife. I love the way he's just, instead of looking at his buddy here, he's looking at us, the reader, like, see what I'm dealing with. So I don't know whether that was intentional or not, but um, so Carl here responds. He tells them not to worry about it. He's got the situation under control. They need to kill one more person and get Batman off their backs. And Vito's like, I still don't understand what he's got in mind. And um, Carl says, it's best if you don't know the details in case Batman grabs you. And then he says, you're afraid I'll talk? And Brannick is Carl's last name. And I love here, Carl's, a little pressure and you'll squeal like a stuck pig, Vito. You're a weak link. We know what happens to weak links. So Carl says that ain't it. Batman doesn't play fair. He's got a way of breaking people. If you got nothing to spill, he can't trick it out of you. Um, Vito says, why'd he ever let Carl talk him into this mess? And Carl kind of goes on his little rant here because we see how crazy the world's gotten. That's why no one knows what it means to be a real man anymore. Them broads is turning everybody into a bunch of wimps. All this women's lip crapola has got everyone mixed up. So keep in mind that this is the late 80s. This is kind of, I don't know but things did eventually start changing. Um, so, so Carl continues here. Someone had to show them how real men should act. Those tramps have gotten too uppity, had to be put back in their place. It's natural order of things, man being the boss. Hell, ain't no crime committed. It was a political statement. So, uh, so we now get Batman. He's at Commissioner Gordon's office. I like the art of this issue much better than the second issue. Dick Giordano just doesn't do it for me as a penciler. Um, DC Comics, you can tell even during this time, Marvel had the better artists, but DC had the better writers. Um, and then they kind of, you know, then Image Comics happened, and both companies sort of fell off their tracks. But then they both of them started to pick themselves back up. But Marvel definitely had the better artists, although John Byrne had moved on to do Superman during this time. So John Byrne's at DC, but Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, um, Mark Silvestri are all at Marvel. Rob Liefeld is about to start at Marvel. You've got Eric Larson kind of starting also at Marvel. So a lot of the Image guys were already at Marvel. I mean, so the Image guys all came from Marvel. Not a single one had come from DC. So DC just didn't have the artists that were heavily coveted during that time. Um, but they had solid people. I think this is, but even Mark Bright ends up going to Marvel to do Iron Man. Although I think he's off Iron Man by this time. I it is no, because I know Bob Layton ended up taking over with Jackson Geis, or Butch Geis as he's known for. So um, definitely, but Mark Bright would not stay on as the regular. He's just doing this, and then Jim Aparo does come back, who did the first issue. So Batman, like I said, he's at Commissioner Gordon's office. Just kind of explaining everything that's going on. They picked their victims at random. Then they had their sick way with these poor women. They took the knife and butchered them. Then they disposed of their bodies at the nearest available trash dumpster. The final insult. So we go back to Carl. The men of the state ought to give us a medal, and then go back to Batman. I swear we'll put an end to their depravity. And then Commissioner says, remember their boundaries, even for you, Batman. And then I like this part here. Your status as Gotham's semi-official vigilante is tenuous at best. So Gordon continues here. You start playing judge, jury, and executioner. Even I won't be able to protect you. Batman says that warning was unnecessary. He knows the rules of the game, and they've got unfinished work to attend to, and tells Robin it's time to go. Gordon says that he's worried about Batman, never seen him so strung out about a case or so obsessed, and just hopes he doesn't screw it up. Carl and Vito leave the apartment. Carl tells him to do exactly as he says, and everything will work out fine, and see you in an hour. And then he sees or notices Robin following Vito, and he says that he expects that they're followed, and he says Batman will most likely follow him, and it won't be easy. And he's got a plan, but suddenly he's distracted here. So Carl notices this woman here, and says that every time he turns around lately, she's there staring. She never says anything, just stands there looking at him, or gawking, as he says. Wonder what she wants, but he can't worry about her now. He's got to concentrate on shaking Batman. I love the shadow here, just showing Batman is behind him. That is so cool. That is comic book 101, man. I love comic books. I truly do. This medium, the things you can do in it, it's so cool. And panels like that here are just exceptional to just convey the mood that Batman's still chasing him. Very cool. So he says here he spends the next 45 minutes diving in and out of places, losing himself in the crowds, doubling back, taking subways, doing anything he can do to lose Batman. Says Batman's good, but even he's not good enough to stay with him once he decides to shake a tail. So, and up here. So Carl says, old Batwimp's about to learn he's finally come up against his equal. And I love this part. Lost him. That is very cool. Jim Starlin, going back to what I said in the beginning, he's so good at the cosmic stuff. Seeing him do I mean, he doesn't even have a lot of like super villains, and I mean, it's not like he came through and brought one of those big time DC cosmic villains to fight Batman. He actually does a street level type thing, so that is admirable. Very versatile. I do like Jim Starlin. I do like this run he does on Batman. So Carl asks Vito if he's there yet, and Vito says, "Yep, he's here." And he asks if he lost Robin, and Vito says, "Yep, it's easy. He's still pretty green, meaning he's inexperienced. So what do we do now?" he asks. And Carl says, "We're gonna take care of a last hit we talked about." Um, Vito says, "I don't like the idea of another killing, Carl." And Carl says, "It has to be done." And he asks, "Who's the mark gonna be?" And we all knew what this was gonna happen. He says, "A weak link," and he's taking out his blade and stabs him. And he says, "Sorry, old buddy, couldn't trust you not to crack and spill your guts," as he's like, "Carl." So here comes the subway, and Carl gets out. Says he couldn't take the chance of going to jail because of Vito. His work's not done. There's still a lot of women out there who needs to be straightened out. He calls them bimbos, but I'm being politically correct here. So the train won't leave enough of Vito to show how they really died. Batman and the cops will have to accept the ruling of accidental death. Nothing anyone can pin on him. He takes the knife. Yeah, they can use that, and you may want to be smarter and get rid of that, but that's all right. And says he's home free. So he goes out drinking with his buddies. He comes home at 4 in the morning. He's got a little buzz on, and he sobers up when he sees the floorboard. And out here off panel, wondering if you found this. Of course, we know it's Batman holding the knife. Not a very imaginative hiding place. See, I said he should have gotten rid of it. I'm sure the test will uncover blood traces on this knife. Another test will show that it's Vito's blood type. And he goes, "Vito." And Batman says, "Yep, I managed to roll him off the tracks before he died. The train missed him, left us plenty of evidence to work with." And Carl doesn't like that, says something inside him snaps, and says, "I'll tear this wimp apart with my bare hands." And then Batman just hits him once, knocks him out. He wakes up in jail. His jaw's broken. The bandages are off, and he's healed up. And 3 months later, when he goes to court, his buddies helped him get a slick lawyer by the name of Brodsky. At least they mentioned that here. And the lawyer asks, "Is it true that you obtained that that Batman obtained that murder weapon for you?" And they're like, "Yep." And the lawyer says, "Contend that this evidence was secured illegally. I move that this be inadmissible and that the case dismissed." And after the judge mulls it over overnight, he says, "It's with great reluctance I must favor with Mr. Brodsky's motion to exclude the alleged murder weapon from evidence." Now, I want to make and I know that this is comic books again, but this is why vigilantes are never endorsed. It is, it's one thing for Batman to do something, but it's just something that they knew this was not going to work. They knew this would not have worked. So, I mean, Jim Starlin kind of does this for the whole sake of doing it, but this never would have gone to trial. The DA never would have prosecuted this because they knew Batman obtained. Lawyers are smart. So it's the main reason why vigilantes, so here he dismisses the case. This is why they're never sanctioned at all, ever. So Batman actually does more harm than good when trying to apprehend criminals, because everything he does is unsanctioned. He's a third party. So the idea of Batman solving crimes, or anyone that is not law enforcement, just doesn't work in the real world. Again, I know that we're looking at comic books here, but I'm just saying that the whole premise of what Batman does in the comics, this is why I'm not against them moving him away. I understand that they have, with as time has evolved, Batman has become more of a superhero and less of a detective, and some people complain about that, but otherwise, all you would do is tell stories of cases getting thrown out all the time. So part of the reason why Batman has changed a little bit. Not the fact that he's still a badass and still one of the coolest characters out there, but the reason he doesn't play this detective role as much are cases like this where, you know, what's the point of Batman doing this? They would never be able to even prosecute this. Um, so going back to the story, Carl feels very lucky, but realizes Batman and Robin are still uh, following him. So Carl knows he's got to leave Gotham City. The Batman and Robin are not going to stop um, going after him. He turns around and sees that blonde woman again, giving him the evil eye, or the stink eye as sometimes it's called, and says he'll be seeing her later. He stops at a store, gets a new knife. The old one is gone. The police claim they got lost. He then goes home and starts packing. Big country to get lost in. So he packs up his van. He's got one. He's got one more score before he leaves. I like here where he says maybe he'll go to Metropolis. He's got to be real careful. Batman's still on him, and all he's got is a radio. It says the radio will tell me when to strike. He's already decided who number 11 will be, and he'll give you 3 guesses who he's chosen. So we all know who he's going. So here we got a redhead, and we got, hey woman, what you doing there? As she's grabbed. But we sort of know as the reader that he wasn't going to pick her. So here's a pimp. I like how he's dressed. Goodness gracious. So tells her she's supposed to be working on 8th Avenue. Why is she goofing off? He says, she says she just didn't feel good. And he's like, what's wrong? An upset stomach maybe? Or is it a headache? And punches her in the head and says, I've got half a mind to cut her. And Robin shows up, tells him he's not cutting anyone. The guy's like, what's your problem? Half pint? Robin says he's your problem. And this so kind of goes through. Robin is upset about the whole, kind of a bully that he's being, and punches her, tells him you can't handle anyone but women, can you? How do you like being on the receiving end for a change? It just keeps punching him, and just Batman finally holds them and says, I think he's had enough, Robin. What are you trying to do, kill him? And says, would it have been a big loss if I had? And he walks away. And Batman's, what's in that head of yours, Jason? So, let me pause here real quick and tell you that here are the seeds. So I've always made mention that the Robin in Detective Comics that was being portrayed and the Robin in Batman were portrayed so much more different. Eventually, the Robin quit appearing in Detective Comics. They got a new writer. He just kind of went to just normal Batman only centric stories, and the Batman title kind of became where Robin was being Jim Starlin already kind of decided that this was the seeds for what eventually, remember, this is Jason Todd. So, in case you forgot, this is Jason Todd as Robin, and these are the seeds that will lead to death in the family as we start with this with this more, I don't want to say lethal, but a more vicious Robin. So Batman kind of stares again, tells him what's in his head. So he asks if we're still planning on busting the counterfeit ring tonight or what. Batman just kind of looks and he says, might as well, yes. So in the radio it says that the police and Batman are working together. Again, when When you already know that everything Batman does is gonna get thrown out of court, why? Why? That's all right. Again, it's sometimes I do overthink my own comic books. After all, I always say it's comics. Let's not overthink it. But we do get on that. Carl overhears that and says it's time to work. And he's waiting for this woman, catches her, and he's trying to get her, but of course you can see she's reaching into her purse. He says, as Carl's saying, "You and I are gonna party, Blondie," and then says, "Like hell we are," and then takes out the not a switchblade. What is that called? Well, it's a razor blade. It's an old razor blade, and slashes his throat. And Carl's like, "This can't be. She cut me. She slashed my neck, my throat." And Carl is just stumbling. What's she done to me? She's killed me as he's going out. He's like, no, no, and then sees all the images of all the women that he has killed, and he's like, broads, even when you're dying, they won't leave you alone. So he's like, dying it can be. It's not fair. It's and then I love again this panel here. Um, Absolutely masterful storytelling. Mark Bright is not one of the more popular per se artists out there, but let me tell you, this dude can compose. I absolutely love this. I don't know whether Jim Starlin had this in a script and it was just his idea, but I really do like that. Um, and then it ends with, "What did I ever do to deserve them?" And then even then, um, we get here. Oh, he. Never mind. I think we're back to Batman maybe narrating. So we get here that about a half hour later, the patrolmen recognize Brannick and called it in. And so they said they didn't have any trouble locating his killer. Um, so her name was Judy Koslowski. She was the sister of Carlos Vito's second victim, Linda. Judy had been busy tracking the killers down even before Batman got on the case. So why is he taking her? This is clearly self-defense. I mean, he went after her. So anyway, and I guess it really isn't self-defense, really, when you kind of think about it. So it could, she did kind of um, lure him in. So which we sort of will get here in the explanation here. So she's like, she tracked him down and started being everywhere he turned so that he would see her. It was the only way I could think of to taunt him into choosing him as his next victim. So then they're like, in other words, you set him up for the killing. And she's like, that's one way to look at it. And this guy says, well, we're going to have to charge you with manslaughter. She says, of course, that's what you get paid for. And then she says here, good luck finding a jury that'll convict me. And then they all kind of stare at each other. The commissioner says, doesn't it bother you that you killed a man? And she's like, a man? I didn't kill a man. I put down a mad dog. So Batman then says, then she said, it may not have been legal, but it was right. So we end with a bit of a moral dilemma. Robin here says, I'll buy that. And Batman says, that's just it, Robin. Judy was wrong. People can't set themselves above the law. That leads to anarchy. And even though you and I skirt along the edges of it, we still operate within the legal system. That's actually false. If Batman and Robin were within the legal system, that case wouldn't have gotten thrown out. They operate outside the legal system. They do the right things, but they are, and I know that this has been used a lot, but no, what Batman and Robin do is illegal. So Um, anyway, he continues here. That's the way it has to be. And so Batman ends with, even though more than a small part of me sometimes wishes it would be otherwise. Um, so what do you guys think of this story? I really enjoyed it. It's nice to see Batman uh, doing um, more mundane or more street level stuff, which I think is what Jim Starlin was going for. Detective Comics kind of becomes the supervillain place, and Batman kind of becomes the ground level kind of stuff. You can see again that the seeds for Death in the Family are starting to be planted. So I think this was Jim Starlin's end game. Also, um, Mark Bright's art really does remind me of Marshall Rogers. So anyway, so I hope you enjoyed these three issues. So Batman 417 from 87, 421 and 422 from 1988. Um hope you, like I said, hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe, and I do thank you for listening. Bye-bye.